Hello, it's Tom again. In this video, what we're going to do is we're going to define an event in our own class. So in the previous video, we were dealing with the timer class and just wiring an event to it. And in our main, underneath where it said part one, we actually called this handling events method. We don't need to, we know that works now, so you can simply just comment that out. And then we'll move on to part two, which is the defining events. Now, before we do anything in program, I would like you to open up the existing dice class. So it's dice.cs. So the dice class represents two cubic dice. Okay, and what this class, eventually this class will have multiple events in it. Right now it has no events in it, but we're gonna, by the end of the all of the videos, you'll have a couple of them anyways. So this is what it is right now. Currently, privately, there is a random object called myRandom. It's a static object, so it's shared between all dice objects. Okay, and this is used obviously to generate random numbers for the actual dice. Okay, there's three properties. Die1. My die1 is the private field, and die1 is the public property. It only has a get, so I can't actually set die1 or die2. I can only find out what it is. And then I have another public property called value, which is just simply the two die values added together. So all of these are kind of read-only type properties or get-only type properties. There's a roll method, and the roll method actually is kind of the really one of the more important methods in this particular class. What it does is it simulates the actual roll. So it's what assigns my die1 and my die2. So currently, all that's happening in here is I'm setting a minimum and a maximum. 1 to 6. And then I'm making die1 equal to a random number between minimum and maximum. The way that the random class works, I have to say +1 there if I want to go actually up to 6, because it's just simply the way that it works. Okay, and I do that for die2 as well. I later on will add validation and raise events and that sort of stuff, but that's the roll method as it is. And then the constructor, to establish the initial values, all I've decided to do is actually roll the dice once to give it its initial values. So that's the dice class as it exists right now. So let's go back to the program class, and I'm going to define a dice object. Okay, so where it says declare a new dice object, instantiate a new dice object should probably be what it actually says. There we go. Alrighty, so I'm going to call it my dice equals, then there's only one constructor anyways. My dice, and then we'll skip over this stuff for now, but down at the bottom it says roll the dice 99 times. So I actually have a method. I want to do that in a method. So let's scroll down until you see the dice roll method. It's mostly defined for you, but you can see here it's a static method. It doesn't return anything. It's called roll dice. I pass it the dice object I want to roll. And I also pass it an integer representing how many times I want to roll it. Okay. I tell the user how many times we're going to roll the dice, just displaying the roll limit. I go into a loop. I'm using a counter called roll, starting off at 1, while it's less than or equal to the roll limit, and then each time I just increase the roll by 1. So I display what the roll number is, roll 1, roll 2, roll 3, with a little bit of formatting there. And then on the same line, I write what the, oh, sorry, there's a spot here we need to actually code, roll the actual dice. So I don't know why I necessarily left, I guess I wanted to give you something to type for this method to complete it. So the dice dot roll is what we want to do there, roll the actual dice, and then display this will be on the same line as above, display the actual dice value. Okay. This little bit of code here is just pausing the input. So if we do this a lot, I don't want it to scroll and not be able to see the rolls that happen first. So every 15 rolls or so, if I take the roll number, modulus 15 is equal to 0. Okay, so it's been a multiple of 15. Then what do I want to do? I just want to pause the console for a second. Okay. All right, and that's basically dice roll. So let's go back up to the main method, and underneath where it says roll the dice 99 times, we'll go ahead and do that. So we're going to say roll dice. And which dice do I want to roll? I want to roll my dice. And how many times? So it says 99, so let's do 99. That'll give us lots of rolls to play with here. So, okay, so let's I'll just save that and let's try this out to see where we are right now. All right. Okay, so rolling the dice 99 times, there's the first 15 rolls, and they all look reasonable. Roll 11, 11. There's another 15. There's a 12. I was worried I wasn't getting any 12s. There's a 12. Okay, there's some 2s, so everything seems to be in range so far. Okay, looks good. So that's the crux of the program. Let's add some events to this. We'll go back to the dice.cs, and above the actual class, you'll notice I have some comments here that says a delegate to define the signature for event handler. The event handler must conform to. What we're going to do is we're going to define a delegate called Snake Eyes Handler. Snake Eyes is when you roll 2 ones with the dice. So the event that we're going to create is, that's going to fire off whenever the dice is rolled, and the roll is 2 essentially, because that's the only way you can get. The only way you can get 2 is with 2 ones with 2 dice. Anyways, so this will be a public delegate. Okay, delegate. And I don't really, it would help if I spelled delegate right. It doesn't need to be too complicated. I'm just going to say void, and I'm going to call it Snake Eyes Handler type of thing. There we go. I'm not even going to bother with any arguments. Okay. So by defining this delegate, all right, that will allow an application programmer later on to define an event handler for this particular event. It just has to conform to this particular signature. Now, to define the event in the actual dice class, underneath where it says events, I want to define an event for the dice class called rolled snake eyes. So it's going to be public, okay, event, and then my snake eyes handler, and I'm going to call the event rolled snake eyes. Okay. So this is the actual event that application programmers will be able to wire their event handler to. Okay. Now the only thing I need to do now is figure out, okay, what's happening? Where does this event actually get raised? So it's going to potentially fire off in the roll method. So in the roll method, I'm going to just modify it slightly to actually make that event happen. So where it says in roll, where it says raise any events, I'm going to check to see if the application actually has an event handler defined for rolling a 2 or rolling snake eyes. And I'm also going to check to see if the roll actually is a 2 or a snake eyes. Okay. So if rolled snake eyes, which is the name of my event, is not null. Okay, if it is null, that means that the application programmer, the person that's writing main or wherever else these dice are going to be used, hasn't actually defined something for rolled snake eyes. Okay, and that's fine. They don't necessarily have to. But if it's not null, that means that they have defined an event handler. So then the next thing to check is if the value of the roll is actually 2. And again, that's the only way you can get snake eyes with a pair of cubic dice. Okay, so if the value equals 2, that means that the event actually happened. So what do I want to do? I want to call rolled snake eyes. Okay, I'm actually just going to cheat here, copy and paste, right? So rolled snake eyes is a delegate. It's wired to the application programmer's actual event handler. So this actually causes the event handler to fire off. Okay. Now, if I were to run this right now, again, nothing is going to be changed from the last time. If I scroll through, I'm watching for a 2. There's a 2. You know, nothing special has happened here because in my main, I don't actually have an event handler. So it's actually doing this, but my rolled snake eyes is in fact null. So let's go back to the program class to main and actually scroll down below main, and we will add a snake eyes event handler. Okay, so it's static, and it has to conform to the delegate. So it's void. I'll give it an identifier. I'll call it my dice underscore snake eyes. It had no parameters. Okay, so that conforms to that delegate. And what do I want to do here? I'm just going to write out snake eyes. Okay, so it's not doing anything super special there, but we'll be able to see it happen. So now what we need to do is we need to actually wire this event handler to my dice. So I'll do that up in main. Okay, so where it says my dice equals new dice, and then I want to wire the snake eyes event. Okay, so it's my dice dot, and then the name of the event, rolled snake eyes, which is what we defined, plus equals. So we're adding an additional event handler. And in this case, again, it's just the name of the method we're using for our event handler. There's no round brackets here, by the way. We're not calling the method. We're just setting that delegate to this method. Okay, so now having done that, let's try running it again. Okay, no 2s that time. Roll 19. You can see the event handler has gone off in between displaying the roll number and displaying the value. Okay, and then 92. You can see why I picked 99. Snake Eyes doesn't happen very often. All right. So that's the crux of defining an event in our class. I will show you one other technique that's an alternative to defining, and this is more for the application, from the application programmer's perspective. You're still defining the event in the class, but rather than having an event handler like we have here, okay, if your event handler does something very, very simple, and ours certainly does, it just, you know, writes, and I'm actually going to copy this, writes snake eyes to the console. What you can actually do instead of defining a whole event handler is just defining what's known as, or using what's known as an anonymous method. Okay, I've lost myself here. Right. So right underneath where you have your wiring, I'm going to comment that out. And what we'll wire to the event, so it'll be my dice dot rolled snake eyes. Okay. Plus equals, and I'm going to use, again, this thing called an anonymous method. Okay, so I'm going to use the delegate keyword. Oops. Okay. With the round brackets after it. Okay, and that just sort of indicates that this is a method that's going to conform to that particular delegate, but it doesn't actually have a name. And then I'm going to define the body right here. Okay, so I've just opened up some braces. And pasted that code directly in line. Okay. And of course I need a semicolon at the end. All right, so this is a very quick way of handling an event without actually producing an event handler. Just to make it a little bit different, I'll do, I don't know, exclamation marks instead of, just so we can see that it's actually doing this one instead. Okay, so I'll run that. So you can see it is in fact doing the anonymous method this time. All right. In fact, what I could do is I could actually have both of them if I wanted to. That would be a little bit weird, but I'll uncomment both of those and go ahead and run it. And let's see if we hopefully get snake eyes here. We can see both events, right? The first, the delegate, sorry, the one where we defined a method for the event handler, and the second one where we've defined it just as an anonymous method for the event handler. Okay, so that wraps up this video. In the next video, what we're going to look at is defining multi-purpose event handlers. Thank you very much.